Once upon a time, in the pre-colonial society of the Philippines, there was a young boy named Tano who lived in a small village in the mountains. Tano was the son of a farmer and had grown up learning how to farm rice and vegetables from his father. He was also fascinated by the stories his grandfather told him about the old ways of their people, the traditions and beliefs that their ancestors had passed down from generation to generation. One day, Tano heard rumors that strange-looking foreigners had arrived in the nearby town. He was curious and decided to go to see for himself. When he arrived in the town, he saw a group of Americans dressed in unfamiliar clothes and speaking a language he didn't understand. They were building new roads and buildings, and Tano watched in amazement as they used machines to do the work that his people had always done by hand. Tano was both fascinated and frightened by the Americans. He had heard stories of how they had defeated the Spanish and taken over the Philippines, and he wondered what their intentions were. He asked around and learned that the Americans had to come to modernize the country and bring it into the 20th century. Despite his initial fears, Tano was drawn to the new things that the Americans brought. He was especially interested in their education system and the opportunities it offered. He had always wanted to learn more about the world beyond his village, and he saw this as his chance. Tano began attending the American school in the town, where he learned English and other subjects. He was a quick learner and soon became one of the top students in his class. He also became friends with some of the American teachers who encouraged him to pursue his dreams of becoming a doctor. Over time, Tano saw how the American colonial period was changing his country. While he appreciated the new opportunities and the modernization that come with it, he also saw how it was eroding the traditional ways of his people. He felt torn between the old ways and the new, but he knew that he had to find a way to balance them. Years later, Tano became a doctor and returned to his village to help his people. He used his knowledge of modern medicine to heal the sick and injured. But he also made sure to incorporate the traditional healing practices of his people. He became a bridge between the old and the new, and his village prospered under his care. In the end, Tano realized that the pre-colonial society he had grown up in was not perfect, but it had its own strength and beauty. He also saw that the American colonial period had brought both progress and challenges, and that it was up to the people to find a way to navigate the changes and preserve what is important to them.
Later.
Philippine under colonial rule, the American period. The American period in the Philippines began in 1898 when the United States defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War and took control of the Philippines. The colonial rule of the United States lasted for 48 years until the Philippines gained its independence in 1946. American economic and strategic interests in Asia and the Pacific were increasing in the late 1890s in the wake of an industrial depression and in the face of global inter-imperial competition. During the American period, the Philippines underwent significant changes in terms of politics, economy, and culture. The Americans introduced a democratic form of government, which replaced the Spanish colonial system. The Philippine Commission was established to serve as the legislative body, while the Philippine Assembly was created to represent the people. The Americans also introduced the concept of public education, which paved the way of the establishment of public schools and universities. The American period also saw the development of the Philippine economy. The Americans introduced modern infrastructure such as road, bridge, and ports, which helped improve transportation and commerce. They also encouraged the establishment of American-owned businesses, which led to the growth of the Philippines economy. However, this also resulted in the exploitation of the country's natural resources and labor force. The American period also had a significant impact on Philippine culture. The Americans introduced Western culture, which influenced the way Filipinos dressed, spoke, and behaved. English became the language of instructions in schools, and American literature and media were introduced to the country. However, this also led to the erosion of traditional Filipino culture and values. Despite the positive changes brought about by American colonial rule, it was not without controversy. The Americans faced resistance from Filipinos who wanted independence and self-rule. The Philippine-American War, which lasted from 1899 to 1902, was a bloody conflict that resulted in the deaths of thousands of Filipinos. The Americans also faced criticism for their treatment of Filipinos, particularly during the Philippine-American War and the Hukbalhap Rebellion in the 1950s. In conclusion, the American period in the Philippines was a period of significant changes and development. It introduced modern infrastructure, public education, and a democratic form of government. However, it also led to the exploitation of the country's resources and labor force, and the erosion of traditional Filipino